Do you label your lines? Like, hey, this is ketamine. There's a ketamine drip. This is an antibiotic drip. This is, whatever.
I like to. Yeah, once they're on like a dedicated drip and I know they're going to be on it for a while, then yeah, I'll mark it in a way where I can't mix them up. Yeah. And it just depends on the transport too. Like sometimes bumps might be enough just to get me to the next place, and sometimes I might get the drug pump out because I need something to kind of to go for the duration of the flight, because I need to preserve bandwidth for other stuff. Like, okay, let's continue working this chest problem or this air problem. So it's ideal. I have a dial of flow just in case, but honestly it's not that accurate, and counting drips in an aircraft isn't the greatest thing. It's like trying to count drips in a moving car driving over rocks. Like, it just doesn't work great. So
right.
Especially once you start kind of messing around with pressors, like that's something you really want to be accurate with. Yeah. Ketamine, yeah, I could get in the ballpark with drips and still be within like a threshold of safety. Pressors, I want that to be as accurate as possible, because there is more risk associated.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of narcotics, like how much, at least obviously every trip is going to be different, but generally anyway, do you see the patient's pain requirements go up during transport or essentially stay the same as they are on the ground?
They generally stay the same. Times where I've seen it maybe go up a little, maybe like a broken back or like a neck injury. Sometimes turbulence can kind of make that worse, but generally they stay the same. And hopefully we've kind of gotten to a good measure of, okay, he needs this much for pain control before we got on the bird. So,
okay. So if he at least has pain control on the ground, he's probably in a good spot for transport.
Yeah. I'd say it's possible, but generally, to me, I've seen it just stay the same.
Okay, perfect. If you do bumps en route, do you like doing like short-acting narcotics, or do you push a fair amount of hydromorphone or morphine?
Yeah, it depends. If the guy's sitting in a good place and his biggest problem is his pain, okay, let me get something long acting. And especially if I have multiple patients, let me get something long acting on this guy who pain is his biggest problem. So I can kind of focus resources and bandwidth on a more severe guy. If it's my only guy and he's not really urgent, okay, I could go with bumps of fentanyl and see how he accepts that. So I like starting with short acting first and knowing how that sticks. Dilaudid's nice, but it is sticky. It does last a while. So
yeah,
I want to know how compliant this guy is with drug admin.
Yeah, no, makes absolute sense. During transport, like you're monitoring, so do you depend a lot on the electrical type monitoring, the automatic BP cuffs, and et cetera, or how does that environment affect your ability to like just manually get vitals?
Yeah, it's not as bad as I think the schoolhouse makes it. You can still feel a pulse in flight. Maybe if you're flying through weather and it's just constantly vibrating, okay, fine. But generally, yeah, you can still get a pulse. And the monitors help a lot because you're deprived of some of your senses. So having a good blood pressure from your monitor helps. The end titles are especially helpful. It's a little harder to feel and count breaths as you got wind in your face. So a technique is taking like a BVM mask, taking an EMA and just placing it on the dude's face, understanding that you're not going to have an accurate end title, but you can get a ballpark count of where he sits and a decent count of his respirations.
Okay. And I mean, if his end tidal is completely out of whack, maybe he needs an actual airway.
Right. Yeah. So it's all contextual. All of these tools that you have, they don't replace your decision making. They just support it. So, yeah, exactly with that thought. Like if you take an end tidal and BVM and stick it on his face and his end tidal's out of whack, it's like, okay, well, look at your patient first. Like, what's going on? Is his injury pattern, does that correlate with, okay, maybe this guy is going to lose his airway and I need to take it? Or maybe he's looking at me, he's perfectly fine, and it's probably the environment just messing with my numbers. So everything is contextual and should be used to support your, clinical acumen, but these devices and tools, they shouldn't be making them